It was another one of those nights where Axel was too wrapped up in his work to even notice me. Dinner was nothing but endless chatter about new projects at the company, and yet another series of never-ending meetings. Sitting at the table, I felt invisible. I'd been that way to him for years now, it was just part of the routine. But tonight, something was different, a small stirring deep inside me, something I couldn't quite ignore. Jason, Axel's son from his first marriage, my stepson. The moment his name crossed my mind, I felt this heavy weight pressing down on my chest. My eyes, almost on their own, drifted to the dim light spilling into the hallway. In that room, just a few days ago, I didn't even want to think about it, but I did. I remembered every single detail. It's hard to admit, even to myself, but what happened that night shattered every boundary between us. Axel has no idea, of course. He's too busy dealing with Shay's teenage outbursts and drowning in his company work to notice what's happening right under his nose. But Jason, he brings a whole different energy into this house. His eyes feel like the only thing that ever truly sees me, and that's both intoxicating and terrifying. For more gripping real-life stories, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I promise this story will leave a mark, so like the video and watch it all the way through. Make sure you turn on notifications and leave a comment, your support means the world to me. Axel's monotonous voice echoed from the living room. I gripped my wine glass tighter, barely registering what he was saying. My eyes wandered back to the hallway again. Every shadow that moved, every little flicker of light reignited that memory in my mind. What happened with Jason? I know it was wrong, but I can't run from what I feel. I jolted when Axel called my name. Laura, are you even listening? He asked, slamming his glass down on the table. I turned to him, forcing a fake smile onto my face. Yes, Axel, I said, but I wasn't hearing a thing. The only sound I could hear was the pounding of my own heart echoing in my ears. Something was about to change, I could feel it. A storm was brewing in this house, and every cell in my body knew it. And when that storm hit, nothing would be the same. Axel kept talking about work, shuffling through the papers spread across the table, rattling off details about some new contract or agreement. His words buzzed in the background like static, meaningless noise. Laura, you understand how important this is for us, don't you? He asked, staring straight at me. I nodded, pretending to care. Of course, Axel, I know, but the truth was I didn't know, I didn't care. The only thing I knew was how alone I felt in this house, and how Axel hadn't even noticed. My eyes drifted to the other end of the table where Shay sat, our little girl, 13 years old, innocent, blissfully unaware of everything. She looked so tired, her eyelids heavy. Come on, sweetheart, let me get you to bed, I said. Softly, she mumbled a quick good night to her dad before standing up. I held her hand as we walked to her room. Tucking her into bed, I brushed her hair back gently. My eyes lingered on her innocent face. Good night, my angel, I whispered before leaving her room. As soon as I stepped back into the hallway, the weight in my chest returned. Leaving Axel under the bright lights of the living room, I made my way to my own bedroom. But the moment I shut the door, that overwhelming guilt clawed its way back to the surface. My breathing quickened. Catching my reflection in the mirror, I flinched at the expression on my face. Jason, Axel's son from his first marriage, 22, young, strong, and so full of confidence, it was almost intimidating. That moment a few nights ago when it all began played on a loop in my mind, no matter how much I tried to push it away. That day, Jason had mentioned he wanted to go to the beach. Axel, as usual, was too busy with work and turned to me saying, Laura, why don't you go with Jason? Keep him company. I was about to protest, but Axel cut me off. It'll be a nice change for you. Drop Shay off at school, and then head to the beach. My son could use a bit of support. Jason, meanwhile, was already standing there with that trademark smirk on his face. Come on, Laura, if you don't want to, just say so. I can go alone, he said, but the challenge in his voice was as clear as ever. On the way to the beach, after dropping Shay off at school, Jason sat silently in the passenger seat, but even that silence felt heavy, loaded with tension. His presence, his scent, it was all too much for me. When we got to the beach, the sun was high in the sky, its heat pricking my skin like tiny needles. I spread out a towel on the sand and sat down, pulling sunscreen from my bag. A flicker of worry crossed my face. I had sensitive skin, and even a few unprotected minutes in the sun could leave me burned. Jason pulled off his shirt and stretched out on the sand, his muscular back catching my eye. His relaxed demeanor was impossible to ignore. "You should try to relax, Laura. Isn't this supposed to feel like a mini vacation?" he said, squinting at me with a sly grin. "Relaxing in the sun isn't exactly my thing," I shot back sarcastically. I shook the bottle of sunscreen in my hand, knowing I needed to apply it to my back. Normally, Axel would help with this. I deliberately looked away from Jason, trying to avoid his gaze, but his voice stopped me in my tracks. "I can help you if you want," he offered. His tone was calm, almost serious, but there was a spark in his eyes that was impossible to ignore. "No need," I snapped quickly, but as the sun started to sting my back, I found myself hesitating. Finally, with a reluctant sigh, I turned to him. "Fine, but just my back," I said, emphasizing every word carefully. Jason sat beside me, a faint smirk playing on his lips. He took the sunscreen, and the moment his hands touched my skin, a shiver ran through me. Gentle but firm, moving steadily across my back, my breathing quickened with every stroke of his hands. "I need to go a little lower," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Jason, that's enough." "You've done enough," I said, but my voice trembled when his fingers ventured closer to my lower back. I instinctively pulled away. He, however, had already shifted back. All right, just making sure you're protected," he said, his tone far too casual, too easygoing. It felt like he was pushing the boundaries of what could still be considered innocent. When he was done, I quickly muttered a thank you and wrapped a towel over my shoulders. But even then, it didn't feel like we were having a normal day. Jason's gaze was on me, I could feel it. I avoided meeting his eyes, but the silence between us became almost unbearable. "Laura," he said after a moment. The way he said my name struck a chord deep inside me. "You've got sensitive skin, huh? You really should be more careful." How could such a simple comment make my heart race like that? What was this strange feeling creeping over me? I fixed my eyes somewhere else and gave a small nod without speaking. I thought that would be the end of it for the day, but I was wrong. I couldn't have imagined how this would linger like a shadow over me, or where it would eventually take me. Jason's brief touch on my back kept replaying in my mind. The tension we'd felt in that moment was thick and heavy, just like the air around us. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, but something inside me stirred, like I'd buried something deep down, and now it was clawing its way back to the surface. That night, I was so exhausted that sleep took over me fast, like a drug. But that touch, that spark from earlier, it wouldn't leave my head. Just thinking about it brought me back to that exact feeling, all over again. The next morning, as I was making breakfast, everything in the house seemed normal, but there was something missing, a sense of unease, of being ignored. Axel was at work, Shay was in her room. The only peaceful moment I had was the silence of the house. Yet even in that quiet, the tension from the day before crept back in. Jason, thinking about him made me feel a pang of guilt suffocating me for a split second. Suddenly, I heard a noise in the house, Jason's yell, a sharp cry of pain. I rushed toward the bathroom, my heart racing. Jason was on the floor, trying to steady himself with his hands. He'd slipped on the wet tiles, and the shock was evident in his eyes, along with the pain. "Jason!" I called out, quickly kneeling beside him to help. "What happened? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, just my foot." "I slipped," he said, but his voice trembled slightly. He was clearly in pain. I helped him to his feet, and guided him to his room, setting him down on the bed and propping his head against the pillow. Jason looked at me without closing his eyes. "Are you really okay?" I asked, my worry evident in my voice, but he was trying hard not to let the pain showed for a while. Neither of us spoke. That strange feeling inside me started to bubble up again. Then suddenly, our eyes met and my heart started pounding. We were so close I could hear Jason's breathing and feel just how near he was to me. In that moment, something shifted, that fine line between us vanished. I couldn't explain it or understand why, but something had undeniably changed. "Laura," he said softly, my name slipping out of his mouth like it carried a weight. But he didn't say anything else. His eyes, though, they said everything. I didn't know what was going through my head. I knew I had to make a choice, but I couldn't move. For what felt like minutes, we just sat there in silence. I couldn't figure out what to do, paralyzed by the intensity of the moment. "Take it slow, Jason," I finally said, carefully lifting his foot to check it. My hands were sweaty, but there was something else, something in my eyes that I tried so hard to hide: guilt, excitement, fear. It was all there, tangled together, and I felt like I was drowning in it. From that day on, I knew things wouldn't be the same. But how and in what way? I don't think anyone could have been prepared for it. Jason's pained expression softened, replaced by a strange look as I wrapped his injured foot with care. My heart raced in the silence between us. In that moment, I realized the only thing I was taking from him was warmth, tension, and maybe the kind of loneliness I'd been feeling for so long. Having him this close stirred something in me that I hadn't let myself feel before, but it was a feeling I'd never had the courage to acknowledge. Jason closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Laura," he said, but this time there was something different in his voice, something heavy, something meaningful. My eyes were locked on him, and then he said the words, "I can't understand why my dad doesn't spend time with a woman like you." Jason's voice was low, with a tinge of sadness. "You're beautiful and lonely." He stepped closer, so close that his nose was almost touching mine. "But me, I've been drawn to you for a long time." For a second I froze. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat, and my eyes stayed fixed on him, wide with shock and indecision. I could feel the chaos inside me spiraling, every word he'd said stirring something deep within. And then, without warning, Jason leaned in and brushed a soft kiss against my lips. For a few seconds, the world just stopped. Everything I felt was messy and undefined. It was intoxicating, that kiss, but it also came with an overwhelming sense of guilt. My eyes had closed without me realizing it, and I didn't know when I'd have the courage to open them again. In that moment, I could feel everything shifting, control slipping through my fingers. There was no going back now. I knew this would come with a price. Jason's kiss had shaken me so much that, without thinking, I kissed him back. I didn't know how or why, but suddenly it. What was happening? I couldn't make sense of it. Everything blurred together. I started questioning myself. Why did I let this happen? Why couldn't I stop? My breathing grew quicker, my heart pounding harder. Warmth spread through my body, but it came with a deep, gnawing fear. Out of nowhere, I pulled away from Jason. I grabbed my clothes, quickly throwing them on without a second thought. I bolted out of the room and ended up in the shower. The water was cold and sharp, like I was trying to wash everything away, trying to escape. Those few minutes under the freezing water shook me to my core. I tried to gather myself, but the turmoil inside didn't settle. When I finally went back to the room, it was eerily quiet, like everything had frozen over. While making dinner that evening, I felt like I was going to collapse. I kept trying to focus, but the emptiness and guilt inside me overshadowed everything. It was like the world had lost its meaning in an instant. No matter how much I tried to push through, my thoughts kept circling back to Jason, and what had happened. During dinner, I was like a ghost, just going through the motions. Something was missing, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. The emptiness inside me only grew, swallowing me whole. At the end of the day, I crawled into bed next to Axel, but even being by his side didn't bring me peace. I couldn't forgive myself for what had happened. I was filled with regret, yet there was this strange, tangled feeling inside me that I couldn't make sense of. Why did I secretly want it to happen again? I couldn't grasp it. I hated myself for it, but at the same time, I couldn't fully reject the memory, the feeling. I kept blaming myself, yet I couldn't deny this pull, this craving to relive that moment. I knew it was wrong, completely wrong, but my emotions and desires were so overwhelming. No matter how hard I tried to push them away, I kept getting dragged back to that place. No amount of effort helped. My thoughts and feelings felt stronger than me. I was lying there, wide awake, drowning in my own mind, trying to fall asleep but failing miserably. I don't know how to fix this. Honestly, I don't even know if it can be fixed. My mind is a mess. I feel lost, trapped between what I feel and what I know I should do. I don't even trust myself anymore because no matter how much I try to resist, I keep slipping further and further. And that's why I'm sharing my story with you. Maybe someone out there has an answer. Maybe you can see something I can't. Maybe you've been through something similar, or know someone who has. I don't know, but before it's too late, I'm searching for a way out. Please, if you have any advice, if you've faced something like this or know someone who has, I want to hear from you. And if nothing else, let this be a warning: loneliness can drag you to places you never imagined you'd go. Don't let it pull you under like it did to me before your whole world falls apart. Realize what's happening. Once you cross that line, there's no going back. Thank you for listening. Please share your thoughts, like this video, and subscribe for more content. I need to know I'm not alone. Sometimes the worst betrayals aren't against others, they're the ones we commit against ourselves.